Introduction before we sort out the slides. I'm Igor Ljubunčić. I work at Canonical as developer advocate. With me, Alastair Flynn, a developer in Canonical. With me, Ed Jones, another developer at Canonical. We're here to do a little hiring fair for you, and we'll do it in a very interactive fashion. So basically, anything you want to know about careers at Canonical, how to get hired, tips and tricks on how to not get hired, anything you want to know about what it's like to work at Canonical, what kind of qualifications you would need to be successful, and so forth. The basic idea here is you'll have two opposing views. I've been at Canonical for 4.5 years now, and when I joined Canonical, the hiring process was a simple 2-interview process. When Alastair and Ed joined Canonical, we kind of initiated a brand new process that has 7 or 8 stages, and it includes a written interview and a few other bits and bobs. So we'd like to also tell you what it was like to be hired in 2018 as opposed to last year. And instead of us talking, you ask us questions, and we'll just go with it. In parallel, if you feel like submitting your CV or ask questions about hiring, you have the emails here at the bottom. And there's also 2 QR codes for if you want to join the Croatian Loco, or if you want to use the custom hiring link. It has a specific code just for DORS, so when we get the CV submissions, we'll know that you were a member, a participant, attendee at the conference, and we'll treat that with, well, with certain priority as well. So maybe we can start with questions from you. Anything you would like to know? Okay, let's bribe them. We'll give you some chocolate after the session if you ask a question. Two chocolates. Okay, so a more pointed question. What would you like us to tell you about what it's like to get hired and work at Canonical? Tough audience, right? Yeah. Okay, then we'll tell you a story instead. So I'll hand off to Alastair for starters, and then... Oh, there's a question. Yes, Chocolate Man.
What positions and what areas you're recruiting for in Croatia?
What positions we're looking for in Croatia?
What departments working in Croatia, or it doesn't mean that it's a widespread team, or how you organize it?
Canonical is a global company. Apart from some very specific roles that require specific regional presence in offices, we don't really have any restriction on where we hire people. We look for talent, and if people are based in a country A, B, or G, that doesn't really matter to us. So there aren't really any restrictions. I mean, if the role requires you to work with, say, people in Asia-Pacific region, maybe it's better to be closer to them in their time zone, but that's very specific to very specific objectives. If you're a developer, sysad, something along those lines, it's probably quite universal. Does that answer your question?
Do you help out with relocations or something like that?
Say again, please.
Relocations, hiring from abroad when your offices are not represented, for example.
So, if I understand the question correctly, does Canonical support relocation from country to country?
Yeah, and does it hire from so, for example, you don't, I don't know, have working visa in EU, and will it be, I don't know, supporting, for example, or something like that, in getting this visa, and if it is interested in candidate, for example?
Okay, so the simple honest answer at the moment is I don't really know. But maybe it's role specific or individual specific. If there's a need, there might be an open conversation about it. I really don't know. Do you know, guys? No. Sorry.
That's a question.
You got your chocolate, it's okay. You don't have to work harder for it. It's yours. Maybe you can tell a bit about how...
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I can just give you a bit of background about working at Canonical in general. Yeah, so like the company is totally remote. So we do have like 5 offices around the world. I think there's one in London, there's one in Austin, Texas, there's I think one in Beijing, one in Taiwan, and some others in other places. But yeah, it's actually a fully remote company. So even though we have these offices, you won't ever be expected to come to them. You can come to them if you want to work with colleagues or whatever. But yeah, it's do what you like, work from home kind of company. And we do have every 6 months an engineering sprint, which the name sprint was coined before agile became a thing, and now it's a bit of a name clash. But it's basically a week where we all get together in one city in the world, i.e. they fly everybody. So literally 2 weeks ago, we were all 3 of us in Prague. And so was the rest of engineering at Canonical, which was like 700 people or something like that. So it was a really like cool week of just getting to meet your colleagues in person, because so my team is Ed, there's a guy who lives in Italy, there's people from America, there's one who lives in Belgium. So we're like all over the place. We just have our like daily sync at a time zone, a point where we can like make it work. And yeah, so it's really cool in that way that you can work from anywhere, and Canonical will employ you in any country to do any role that they need. It doesn't matter where you're from. Question?
And how do you organize that? Do you have contractancy agreements, or do you?
Yeah, so I think the way it works is Canonical has legal presence in 5 countries or something, the UK, America, and some other ones. But everywhere else, it's like you're a contractor for Canonical Group. They treat you the same as they treat employees from the countries where there are like laws on how long all the sort of legal stuff that gives you protection and things. Just because you're a contractor doesn't mean you're going to get treated any differently. Even though legally they could, they won't, as a sort of policy in general. Yeah, any other questions before I go on? For chocolate? Yeah, sorry.
Which vacancies do you seeking for?
Sorry, what?
Job descriptions.
Which positions are we hiring
Yes,
for?
exactly.
So the link there should take you to a massive list of everything that's open at Canonical at the moment. We're actually going through a massive hiring spree in general. So the answer is kind of everything. The company is growing. It's currently at 1,000 people, and I don't know, what was it when you joined?
When I joined, we were maybe half of that, so we were like 500, 600 people 2-3 years ago. So we're growing quite a bit.
Yeah, so basically, since Canonical also does such a wide range of things, it's probably likely that they are interested in something you have skills in. We do a lot of development in Go and Python, and then just random other bits. There's since Ubuntu is so massive, right? We work on support for every language under the sun, which needs an expert in that language to work on it. And there's just a really diverse array of different things and skill sets that are needed. And that's not just limited to engineers. That's product managers or sales or like every other thing that makes up a large engineering company. Yeah. I don't know. Any other questions?
Thanks.
Do you want to tell them?
So it's When I joined the company, it was about a year ago now, I think, and yeah, there have been, as Igor mentioned, quite a few changes to the hiring process in recent years. We get quite a lot of applications, and as a result, we need to do a lot of work to figure out who's who and who's going to be going where. So when you apply for a role, that may not necessarily be the role that you end up in. So after a certain point in the interview process, what will probably have happened is that the company will have decided, hey, this person's a really good candidate. We want them somewhere. I've heard stories of people having interviews with like different teams and ending up in like something fairly different from what they were expecting to actually be hired in, just because there had already been that decision that, wow, this person is a really good candidate. We want them somewhere. We've got to find something for them. So I think it's worth keeping an open mind. The process is quite long. There's no two ways about that. When I went through it, the first stage was just normal CV stuff, bit of a cover letter, and then I get an email back from the hiring lead telling me, hey, this looks good. Would you like to fill out this written interview? The written interview, if you read Reddit and people's opinion on there of Canonical's hiring process, is quite controversial. So it's about like 30 questions I had to do in total, asking about a whole range of different subjects, from like my experiences in high school, what sort of person I am, all the way to what kind of projects have I worked on. Do I have experience in like, I don't know, Golang? Do I have experience in Rust? Do I have experience working with web technologies, and how have I found them? There are a great many questions on this written interview, but you don't have to be an expert in absolutely every single one of them, because like no one is. Quite frankly, if you're an expert in all of them, maybe it's kind of a situation where you're good at all of them, but you're not like amazing at any single one of them. So if you don't feel like you can answer all the questions, it's okay to just say, hey, I haven't had any experience with that. I'll throw my hands up and just be honest. After the written interview process, the written interview part, which for me it took about like 2 weeks-ish to write that. This wasn't like solidly working on it. I was in the pandemic at this point and kind of juggling getting a job versus doing my own projects and kind of lazing about after uni, I'll be honest. So it wasn't like too bad. After the written interview, though, there was an interview with just like a meet and greet thing. It was the first chance where I had to actually talk to a person from the company. It was like 30 minutes of just a quiet chat with a person, just to see, hey, does this guy fit in with our culture? And the answer is basically yes. That isn't designed to like filter candidates or anything. It's more like a chance for you to ask any questions which you may rightfully have by that point in the interview process. So that was pretty pleasant. I met a guy there I'm quite close friends with now. After the meet and greet interview, I had a couple of technical interviews talking about I don't know, like how deep is my knowledge of like Linux and a couple of the other technologies that the company works with. It was like an hour long each, and we're with like a head of a respective department. I think I interviewed with the head of the web and design department and the head of the kernel team. Even though I wasn't applying for roles in either of those teams, it was just a person who happened to be free at the time and who you could have an interesting conversation about Linux with, basically. After the technical interviews, there's a bit of stuff with HR, just like some box filling, like nothing too bad. And then finally, it was on to the interviews for a particular role. Now, this interview with the role, I ended up only having like one of these, because when I saw the role in front of me, I was like, oh my god, I really want to work on that thing. So I had the interview. It was like an hour long. It was with the CTO. He surprisingly had time, and yeah, that's all nice. I only had one of those role-specific interviews, but like I mentioned a moment ago, it's at that point where people may end up going around lots of other different teams, and yeah, I think in the worst case, I have heard people going around like 7 or 8 different teams, just because it's not that the candidate isn't like up to the job. It's the opposite is true. They're definitely up to it, but like where are we going to put them, please? Yeah, so that was my interview process. It took about 3 months to complete. It's a little bit shorter now. There is an acknowledgement that, yes, it is a fairly lengthy process. So they're trying to condense all of that down. Whereas when I was doing it, each time I had another round of interviews, they would only schedule like 1 round ahead. Now they're scheduling like multiple interviews, so you can kind of expedite the process a little bit. There's also improvements that they've made to like a hiring dashboard, so you can actually see where your application is. I think this was because I was applying for jobs for quite a while, and it was really, really unpleasant. You know, you send off your CV to a company, and then you wait 3 weeks, and then you don't hear anything back from the company, so you just think, oh, great, oh, I guess that was that then. They don't even like give you the decency of response. But here, with the dashboard, you can see what the status of your application is the entire way through the process. So you're never left halfway through thinking, did I make it to the next stage? Did I not? Admittedly, that was a thing that I had, because this dashboard did not exist a year ago when I was interviewing. This is like the past 6 months that I think they started doing this. So yeah, it is a long process, but there is ongoing work to improve it, shorten it, and make it a more pleasant experience. Question?
So the dashboard. I have heard and have experienced that the steps can change mid-process. So extra steps can get added. So are those listed up front as potential additions, or could it change, or is that now stationary and it will never change from what you've been scheduled?
So the question is, will the interview process change as you're going through it? I think it's quite difficult to give an answer on that, because like there could be some decision that perhaps maybe the way that we're currently doing interviews isn't the way that we want to be doing it in future, and well, the company reserves the right to change that, of course. I think in your case, where they change it halfway through, it sounds like that was just an unfortunate consequence of some decision being made, and then you're on the annoying end of it, sadly. I think the interview process, as I understand it, is relatively stable now. Of course, it can change. I'm not going to say it's set in stone, but...
I can elaborate a little bit. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to upset you lot. So when I interviewed maybe 9-10 months ago, at the end of the interview process, the CEO decided to interview me separately. And I have heard that that is an option that can happen. So I was wondering, is that listed as a separate step?
I think that's probably done more on a case-by-case basis. When I went through the interview process, there was that very last interview that I had. There was a little bit of scheduling difficulty, and I nearly actually had that interview with the CEO. So, but then it was rescheduled last minute because I guess he was busy. So I think it could have been the case that maybe there was just some timetable clash with something else, and then like he stepped in and gone for an interview. I don't know.
Thank you.
Would you like to hear some tips and tricks on what to do when you submit your CV? The best trick you can basically not do is do not use AI tools, to generate your answers. And unfortunately, since ChatGPT and associated tools became the next thing, some people think they can shortcut their way through life by submitting AI-generated text. And the simple answer is, it does not work. When humans read those answers, ergo us, and other people who are in the hiring process, they look at the answers and go, not good. You basically not just eliminate yourself from a specific position, you probably cause yourself way more damage than you would have with any human honest answer. So the tip would be yourself and be honest. You don't have to be a Shakespeare to write good answers. You don't necessarily have to have experience in specific fields. It's much better to say, I don't know, or my knowledge is limited, or this is what I know and here's my short answer, than to go for paragraphs upon paragraphs of AI-generated stuff. So that's a tip that I have. Anything from you folks?
Sure. I guess for the written interview, don't underestimate it. It takes a while, and it's kind of, it can be a long process and kind of, painful, but it's worth putting in the effort. And then also after the written interview, there's some automated sort of tests that online, and those are also they don't take too long at all, and you don't need to prepare for them. They're 30 minutes, but make sure that you're fully engaged in them, because again, if you don't get it, well, you want to do as well as you can on them, right? Because it does really affect the score on our side, how well you perform in those tests. So yeah, don't underestimate them, basically. Ed?
If you're curious as well, they also give you, you can ask for the results of those tests, just to make sure everything's completely open. So if you're curious about how you did, when I did mine, there was actually one category where I didn't do so well on. The reason for this is rather silly, which is that I really like looking at letter forms and typography and all that stuff, and they had some really interesting looking letters on the page, so I got distracted by that. But yeah, it wasn't, all in all, it wasn't too bad. When it comes to written interviews, though, I just, because we all have to review these things, because being a 1,000 people company, it's really not that big for the sheer volume of applications that we get. We look at all of them, right? If there's a written interview, we will be reading through it from start to finish. So what's very important, and the thing that I find really makes me excited about a written interview, is when I can see not only that there's a decent amount of technical ability, but there's also passion behind what this person has done, and you can see that there's a story going on here. This is a thing that you don't get if you submit an AI-generated a written interview, because it'll be answering 30 questions all as individual. But if you take a step back and try to piece together what is this person like, what are their interests, and what's driving their decisions, with AI it's just all over the place. But if you, as a human being, which apparently is a gift in these times, actually go and put your heart into this process, we will be able to see on the other end, hey, this is a really interesting person. We've got to go talk to this person. Yeah.
Any questions you have for us? Yeah, so I was reading up the Reddit thread about the hiring process. It's quite comprehensive. Can you give us the reasoning why that? So if I heard the question correctly, for the sake of everyone else in the live stream, you read a thread on Reddit, and it highlighted that the interview process is very long. So the question, why is it so very long? The simple answer is, we're experimenting to figure out what's the best way to get best candidates for the longest retention period. Typically, you hire someone, they can stay in your company for 3 days, or 3 years, or 15 years. And we're trying to figure out if there's a science behind what happens before and during the interview process and after that. And the idea is to make sure that, not in any cold human manipulation sense, but in a real human sense, figure out what's the best way to give the best work environment to potential candidates, so that they'll actually be happy and enjoy doing what they do, not just one day, but maybe 2, 3, 5, 7 years after they've been hired. And how we do that is we're trying all sorts of different hiring methods. The main process is what we just mentioned, but there are also other ways we're thinking and exploring. We used to have a very short process, now we have a much longer process. We'll probably have some other future iteration of it, so things may change. But the goal is to be able to do the best possible job. I mean, you can hire people easily. You can also fire people easily. That's not the point. The point is to do something meaningful and also humane. Anything else? We'll have to bring up the chocolate budget again. So, anything else you'd like to know? Any other? How do I, so that your potential hire at Canonical is more successful? Like, should I wear a suit to an online meeting? That's an open question, for instance. Don't need a suit. What else? Anything else you want to add, chaps, or we call it a day? Oh, there's a question.
So this is going to be from personal experience again. How do you paper over a poor work history?
Sorry, say again?
How do you talk about a poor work history in a way that allows the hiring people to know that you're knowledgeable, can do the work?
Can you rephrase? I'm not 100% sure what you mean.
Say you've had long-term illness, so you haven't had much of a career. So how would you show that you are capable of doing the work without a work history?
Okay, so the question is then potentially for people who may have a disability, or let's say people who are very early on in their studies and they don't have much work experience, how do you prove that you can do a good job without like a meaty history behind you of achievements and accomplishments?
Yeah, so say you've got loads of community contributions and very little work history.
Okay, so the suggestion goes back to something that Ed said. The written interview is, in a way, it is very long, it can be exhausting, but it's entirely in your control. You're not under pressure, there's no time limit. You sit in your own home and you can write whatever you like. You can write one-line answers, or you can write a 50-page essay about yourself, if you think that's the right way of presenting yourself. So just try to be honest to yourself and present your passions and truths where you have them in the answers. You may not be successful, but at least you'll have the full knowledge of personal integrity when you do the written interview. And that's the best suggestion that I can have. You may not have specific experience, or you can be just after college graduation or university graduation. That's fine, but there could be something behind all of that that highlights that you're someone with passion and knowledge and ability to learn, and that could be enough. Any other questions? Or anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so this is my first job, so I didn't actually have that much experience beforehand. So how I kind of tried to get around that was I do quite a lot of programming in my own personal time. So in that written interview, and then using the same narrative that I then carried through the other interviews, I tried to just weave together a story of all the work that I had done, so that even though small disparate contributions in many different areas may have been part of it, and perhaps without something tying them together, they might seem quite small. If you can show that actually these form part of like an entire vision and a real driving passion, these are things that you have done many things because you really care about this. I think it's that kind of force of character that if you can put that across, it's really powerful to read.
We have one more minute, so that should be the last question. And if you just say before you ask, if you have anything else you would like to ask us, you can keep us outside, or email, or person, or here.
So I have a question. I don't know if I'm going to repeat any of here, but how do the big firms look at volunteering? So someone doesn't have much of work on his CV, but he has a lot of volunteering experience in fields of IT or fields of managing people, managing projects and things like that.
Volunteering, essentially unpaid work, if you will, right? So it's still work in a sense that you did something, you tried your best, you have results. Show them. I mean, you didn't get a paycheck for something that doesn't invalidate your effort or your passion. Same way if you're a kid and started learning Linux when you were 10, and now you're 25 and you have 15 years of Linux experience, maybe you didn't get paid for it, but you were dabbling in distros before you even know how to spell a distro. I mean, that's something, right? So we're out of time. Thank you for listening. If you have any other questions, meet us outside.